In the middle of the night, a girl declared dead on the autopsy table suddenly starts crying. Could this sound bring back to life not only her, but also the heart of a doctor who lost his daughter years ago? Stay with us until the end, and let's discover this secret together. The clock read almost 11 p.m. when Dr. Germán Cárdenas pushed open the heavy door to the autopsy room. The metallic sound echoed in the empty hallway. He was tired. The shift seemed endless, and that small body on the cold table was just one more among so many. The white light on the ceiling flickered slightly, as if it too were tired. Germán adjusted his glasses, took the file, and frowned. No name, no record, he muttered to himself. Female, approximately 9 years old. There were mud marks on the girl's legs. The sheet covering her barely hid the neglect. One of the policemen standing at the door scratched his chin unhurriedly. "Doctor, they found her in a village near the old road," said the man indifferently. "No one has claimed her. The people there said she was found lying near the river." Germán looked up. "And her parents? No clues." The policeman shrugged. "Nothing. It must be another one of those sad stories. Lost child. Or worse. But anyway, case closed." Those two words, case closed, echoed in his head. There was something about them that bothered him, as if someone had put an end to it prematurely. He waited for the policeman to leave, took a deep breath, and approached the stretcher. The sheet was damp at the edges, as if they had washed the body in a hurry. Germán lifted it slowly. The girl had a delicate face. Dark hair stuck to her forehead, and a small scar near her chin. She didn't seem to have suffered. She looked as if she were asleep. 9 years old, he whispered. "She could be my daughter." He spoke softly, almost to himself. Since losing his wife about 7 years ago, Germán had developed the habit of talking to himself. Sometimes it was the only way to hear a voice amid the constant silence. He picked up the scalpel, adjusted his gown, and looked at her face again. "Forgive me, little one. It's just my job." But something made him hesitate. There was something strange about that room. The air felt denser, colder, and yet there was a different smell. It wasn't the typical smell of death. It was something softer, almost sweet, like wet earth after the rain. He looked at his watch. The second hand was turning too slowly. Time seemed to crawl inside. A nurse opened the door. "Doctor, it's going to take a long time in there. Can I turn off the lights in the hallway?" "Yes, go ahead and turn them off." When the door closed, Germán was alone again. The sound of the ceiling fan filled the room with a steady noise. He moved closer, and for a second, he thought that the girl's chest was moving, but it was just the shadow of the fan. "Sure, that's what it was. I'm old now," he muttered. He pulled up a chair and sat down, looking at her as if observing a mystery. Deep down, something inside him wanted to believe that she wasn't just another body, but fatigue weighed heavily on him, and the real world left no room for miracles. With an automatic gesture, he removed the glove from one hand and placed 2 fingers on the girl's neck, where you feel the pulse. Nothing. Even so, he stayed there a few more seconds in silence. The cold in the room seemed to increase. Germán scratched his face, got up, and placed the scalpel on the metal tray. His hand trembled a little when he lowered the scalpel and touched the skin. He only touched it, and then a soft, almost imperceptible sound came out. A sob, then a cry quiet, muffled, like that of a frightened girl. Germán froze. The scalpel fell from his fingers and hit the floor with a sharp sound. He opened his eyes wide and felt dizzy. His vision blurred, and his blood pressure dropped suddenly from the shock and fear. No, he stammered, taking 2 steps back. "This can't be possible." But the sound repeated itself. It was real. The girl was crying, her chest rising and falling, slowly tears falling from the corners of her closed eyes. A sound of weak, trembling breathing filled the room. Germán put his hands to his head, not knowing what to do. His whole body was shaking. The floor seemed to be spinning. "Holy God," he murmured. "This can't be happening. I'm going crazy." His heart was beating so hard it hurt. He tried to take a step, but his legs wouldn't respond. His face turned pale. The sound of his own blood buzzed in his ears, as if it were a horror movie, and then everything went white. Germán fell backward, the thud echoing on the tiles. The scalpel rolled across the floor and stopped next to the stretcher. Silence. The crying stopped. The light flickered for a moment. There was nothing left but the motionless body of the doctor and the girl with her eyes closed, breathing. Minutes later, the cold floor touches his back, a buzzing in his ears. The white light. He opens his eyes suddenly, his mouth dry, his heart racing. "Hello." His voice comes out hoarse. "Help. Anyone here?" He tries to get up, slips, puts his hand on the stretcher, the scalpel on the floor, the tray crooked, the smell of alcohol in the air, the little girl with her eyes closed, a trickle of tears drying on her cheek. "Germán!" He screams louder. "Help! Nurse!" The door opens with a bang. 2 nurses rush in, followed by a technician. "What happened, doctor?" asks Martin, panting. Germán points, trembling. "She cried. She's alive. I fainted. Please look." The 3 look at each other. One wrinkles his nose. "Boss, you took it," whispers the technician, not daring to say it out loud. "I didn't take anything," he almost growls. Pale, his eyes red. "Check now." Martin takes the girl's pulse and counts silently. Heavy silence. The ceiling fan turns slowly. The clock ticks. "There's a heartbeat here," he stammers. "Weak, very weak, but there is one." The technician brings the stethoscope with a trembling hand and places it on the small chest. She closes her eyes for a second, as if she needs courage to listen. "I hear it too," she says with a broken voice. "It's faint." "But there's saturation," Germán shouts, coming to his senses. "Pulse, oxygen, thermal blanket, and bring me the emergency cart." The room is now filled with movement. The sound of wheels on the floor, the click of the oximeter on the little finger. The timid beep appears on the monitor. Irregular, stubborn, beep, silence, beep, beep. "Come on, little one," he says softly, leaning over the girl. "Hold on a little longer, just a little longer." The technician covers the body with the thermal blanket. Steady hand, teary eyes. "This doesn't make sense," she whispers. "She arrived as if dead, doctor." Paper signed. "Everything's fine. Nothing's fine," Germán cuts in, without taking his eyes off her face. "Assisted breathing, slowly. Don't let go, Martin." The nurse adjusts the oxygen flow, fingers quick but sweaty. "Pressure almost at 0, he says, swallowing hard. "If we move her too much, she'll fall. So no one moves her just for the sake of moving her," Germán replies. "Only necessary." The door opens again. 2 more people from the team arrive, curious, frightened. A guard bumps into the table. "Doctor, what's going on?" "People on the floor?" he asks. The lights flickered. They said they heard a scream. "She's alive," Germán replies in a low voice. "That's her." Her eyes shine in a way that no one has seen in years. "Yes," he decides firmly. "Get ready for the transfer. Isolate the elevator. Call the intensivist and someone notify management. Critical case. Alert the entire hospital." "Are you taking charge?" Martin asks. "Yes, and charge everything to my card. If anything goes wrong, it's my responsibility." The comment spreads down the hallway before any calls are made. In seconds, the rumor spreads. The girl from the autopsy is alive. People peek through the doors, whispering and crossing themselves. No one understands. Some laugh nervously. Others hold their breath. "Careful with her neck," he orders. Germán, returning to technical mode, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, they slide her carefully as if she were made of glass. The monitor follows her, hanging from its stand, the cable moving, the beep stubbornly continuing, weak but there. "Doctor." The technician looks at Germán uneasily. "This is going to be in the newspapers. They're going to say we made a mistake, that we don't know how to declare a death." He takes a deep breath, his face tired but firm. "We'll explain later. Right now, we take care of it in the hallway." The cold feels more intense. The fluorescent lights make an annoying buzzing sound. The elevator takes forever. Germán runs his hand through his hair, trying to hide the tremor. He looks at the girl, her tiny mouth half open, her skin now covered by the blanket. He holds the stand with one hand, and with the other gently touches her shoulder outside the fabric. "Stay with me." "Yes," he whispers. "Stay." The elevator door opens. The equipment enters, crammed in. Cables, tank, blanket. Germán enters last and doesn't take his eyes off the monitor. as if he could hold each beep with his fingers. "If the saturation drops, raise it 2 points," he says without blinking. "Yes, sir." The doors close. The elevator mirror shows a harsh image. A pale doctor, wrinkled gown, sunken eyes, and in the center, a tiny girl struggling to breathe. The elevator rises slowly, as if the building were also afraid to rush life. "Is she alone?" the technician asks quietly. "No one with her." German doesn't answer right away, his throat closing up only when the VIP takes too long to return. "Speak now," he says. The doors open in the ICU. The smell changes. Stronger antiseptic, drier air, harsher light. The on-call team rushes in. A young doctor adjusts the bed. The nurse carefully arranges the cables. Someone closes the curtain. Access line, warming, antibiotics if necessary, but only after, German repeats, as if praying. "Stabilize first." "Who is she?" asks the intensive care specialist, putting on his gloves. "For now, she's unidentified," German replies. But she's not without hope. The intensive care specialist smiles a little tiredly. "It's okay. Let's take it step by step." Machines turned on, red light flashing. The beep finds a slightly less timid rhythm. A whisper passes from bed to bed. People holding coffee in the air and forgetting to drink it. People praying softly. A silence that weighs heavily and embraces German, leans against the wall for a moment as if he needs to remember how to breathe. His body hurts. His head is spinning, but his eyes are awake as they haven't been in a long time. He returns to her side, runs his hand carefully over the blanket, adjusts the corner near her chin. His fingers tremble, and he doesn't even try to hide it. "You arrived on my shift," he says, almost laughing, almost crying. "Just today. Why?" No one answers. Only the stubborn, sincere VIP. He closes his eyes for a second, as if listening to something that cannot really be heard. When he opens them, he speaks softly to her and to himself. "You were sent to me." He stays like that for a while, still, with his hand on the blanket. The world outside continues to rush by, but inside that ICU, time learns to walk carefully. And for the first time in many years, German feels his chest warm. It's not fever, it's not fear, it's something else, something simple, something he had almost forgotten. The girl is lying down, connected to cables and machines, and the sound of the monitors is the only constant noise in the intensive care room. Beep, beep, beep. A soft sound, almost like a heart trying to remember what it's like to live. German watches from a distance in silence, his hand still trembling, his gown wrinkled, the skin on his face marked by hours without sleep. He can't take his eyes off her. Each weak breath the girl takes seems like a miracle happening right in front of him. A fair-skinned nurse adjusts the blanket and carefully cleans the little arm covered in dried mud. She speaks softly, as if afraid of waking her. "Poor thing. She's so fragile, she looks like a little bird," she murmurs. German approaches slowly. "How weak is she, doctor?" "Very, but there's something." He hesitates a little. "It's strange. Her skin still has color." He shakes his head, not knowing how to explain. He just watches. Clara takes a damp cloth and wipes the girl's wrist. The cloth pulls away a little dirt, revealing something hidden. She stops, frowns, and waits. "What is this?" German approaches. Between the marks on the skin appears a thin bracelet made of thread, with colorful plastic beads worn down by time. "It looks like a child's," says Clara, cleaning it more carefully. The letters are slowly revealed, small and crooked, as if they had been placed there by a small, uncertain hand. "UZ," the nurse sighs. "Loose." German also reads it in a whisper, almost without a voice. "Loose." He puts his finger on the bracelet. The little letters shine under the cold hospital light. That simple word crosses the air like a sigh. Loose. For a moment he feels something in his chest, a warmth that came from nowhere, as if the room, which had been so cold before, had been filled with something different. "What a beautiful name," Clara says, trying not to show her emotion. "Is that her name?" German replies softly, without taking his eyes off the girl. "Maybe, or maybe it's something else." His face tenses. The memories come back. The sleepless nights, the loss of his wife, the empty apartment. He has always lived between the silence and the noise of the machines. But now that little bracelet seemed to have broken something inside him. Write that down, he asks without looking at anyone. Possible name, Luce. The nurse nods and writes it down on the sheet. The sound of the pen writing on the paper seems like a silent promise with something they still don't understand. Clara looks at him with eyes full of tears. Doctor, do you think she's going to? He interrupts her gently. Now, she's alive. That's all that matters. Silence fills the room. Germain adjusts the blanket better covering the girl's fragile body. The bracelet remains visible there on her small wrist, as if to say to the world, I'm still here. He stays for a while looking at the name Luce. It seems to shine even under the cold light of the lamps. And for the first time in many years, Germain feels like saying thank you, but he doesn't know to whom. Night falls over the hospital, and silence fills the corridors. Only the sound of the machines in intensive care, that constant, soft beep that marks the rhythm of life trying to stay. Luce lies motionless, her small body surrounded by cables and tubes. Her breathing is light, almost a whisper. Sometimes her eyelids tremble as if she were dreaming of something far away. Germain enters slowly, carrying a metal chair. It is now a routine. Every night he sits next to her, sometimes reading aloud, other times just staying there, watching as if caring for a miracle, afraid it will be lost. Good night, little one, he says, tucking the blanket around her chest. Today I brought a new book. Yes, a book of old stories. My daughter liked these. He opens the book carefully, the cover worn by the years. The soft light from the lamp illuminates the yellowed pages. His voice is calm, hoarse, with long pauses. Once upon a time, there was a girl who liked to run through the fields and talk to the stars. At this point, if you were here, what kind of story would you tell this little girl? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. He reads slowly, watching her face lit by the light. There is no reaction, but sometimes he swears he sees a muscle moving, a small sigh, something that makes him continue. Outside, the clock strikes 2 in the morning. A fair-haired nurse enters slowly to check the equipment. She smiles when she sees Germain there, with the book in his hands. Aren't you going home again, doctor? She asks affectionately. He shakes his head. My home is here now. And he looks at the girl again. I don't want you to wake up alone. Clara approaches, checks her temperature, adjusts her pillow, and before leaving, touches his shoulder and says softly, You have a beautiful heart, doctor. It's been a long time since he's seen someone care like that. He smiles shyly and remains silent. Time passes. The constant sound of the machines mixes with the wind in the windows. Germain begins to fall asleep in his chair, but a soft murmur wakes him up. He raises his head, confused, thinking he dreamed. Mommy, she says again, almost without strength, her lips barely moving. Germain freezes, his whole body trembling. He approaches slowly, his heart racing. Luce whispers, You spoke? Her eyes are still closed, but she murmurs again, her voice slurred, almost a lament. Mommy, don't leave me, Mommy. The word cuts through the silence of the room like a knife. Germain gently places his hand on hers. Hey, calm down, little one. Your mom is with you, he says, not knowing if she can hear him. She moves her fingers slightly, almost imperceptibly, but he feels it, and that's enough to fill his eyes with tears. Rest, my child, rest, he continues, his voice trembling. No one is going to leave you. The monitor continues to beep softly and steadily. The room seems to breathe with her. In the days that follow, he repeats the ritual, bringing books, stories, music. Sometimes he just talks about life. You know Luce. My wife also liked yellow flowers. She said they were like the sun on earth. When you wake up, I'll take you to see a garden full of them. He talks and smiles, as if she can hear him. The nurses are used to it by now. Every night they see Germain sitting there with his elbows on the edge of the bed, his eyes tired, his heart awake. One clear dawn, he enters again and sees the scene. The doctor asleep in the chair, his head resting on the mattress, his hand holding the girl sees, and Luce, still unconscious, moving her lips, repeating softly, as if speaking in a dream, Mom, Don't leave me." Clara leans against the wall and cries silently. The scene is simple, but it hurts. Time in the hospital seems to stand still. The nights pass, and Germain remains there, steadfast, reading, caring, talking, and every time she says, "Mom," he responds in the same way, with tenderness. "Here I am, Luce. No one will ever leave you alone again." In that quiet corner of the ICU, between the sound of the machines and the smell of alcohol, something is born that has no name but has strength, and that is what keeps Germain going night after night, believing that somehow the girl hears him. It was dawn. The hospital slept, enveloped in that heavy silence that only places where there is pain know. The lights in the hallways flickered a little, the distant sound of a heart monitor mixed with the hum of the air conditioner. Germain sat next to the brightly lit bed and stared at her. Her face was calmer that night. He adjusted the blanket and gently touched her small, cold hand. "You're fighting so well, little one," he whispered. "Keep it up." His eyes were red from sleep, but he didn't want to close them. Not anymore. Her every breath was like a thread that also kept him alive. Downstairs, the guard Ramon was doing his routine rounds. He had a habit of standing in front of the surveillance cameras for a few seconds just to stave off boredom. He grabbed his lukewarm coffee cup, turned his chair around, and looked at the screens. Everything was the same. Empty hallways, a silent parking lot, the closed gate. But something caught his attention on the outside camera that showed the side of the hospital facing the main street. A shadow was moving slowly. He narrowed his eyes and leaned forward. A woman was standing leaning against the wall with her hood covering her head. She was wearing a dark coat, with her hands in her pockets. She didn't seem lost or scared. She was just watching. Ramon frowned and turned the control to zoom in on the image. Her face was barely visible, only the outline, but you could tell that she was crying. If the mysterious atmosphere of this story draws you in, don't forget to like the video. That way, more people can discover this story. Her tears glistened in the light of the street lamp. "What the hell?" whispered the guard, pressing the radio. "Control room calling reception. There's someone outside on the east side. A woman alone with a hood." The receptionist replied in a sleepy voice. "Do you want me to call the police?" "Wait a minute. Let's see what she does." On the screen, the woman took a few steps forward, then stopped, raised her head, and looked directly at the hospital, as if she were looking for a particular window. She stood there for a few seconds without moving, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Then she covered her face and cried even harder. Ramon swallowed hard. How strange. Suddenly she took something out of her pocket, a small object, perhaps a doll or a piece of cloth, and pressed it against her chest. She stood there for a while, breathing deeply, as if trying to gather the courage to take a step she couldn't take. But she didn't go in. She just turned around and began to walk slowly, disappearing into the early morning fog. The guard continued to watch the screens for more than a minute, waiting for her to return. She didn't come back. The next day, at around 6 a.m., Germain drank coffee in the hospital kitchen. His face was tired, his robe wrinkled, his gaze lost. Ramon entered, somewhat uncomfortable, with a clipboard in his hand. "Doctor, can I talk to you for a second?" "Sure. Ramon, something happened last night." "Last night?" He hesitated, looking at the floor. The cameras caught a woman outside. She stood there for a while looking at the building. "I was going to call the police, but I don't know. She didn't seem like she wanted to do any harm. She seemed sad." Herman raised his eyebrows. "A woman? What time?" "Around 2:30 in the morning. She stayed for a few minutes, then left." The doctor frowned. "She had a hood, so I couldn't see her face, but she looked like she was crying." He paused. "She seemed to be crying." Germain remained silent, the coffee growing cold in his hand. His heart began to beat faster, with a knot growing in his chest. He said, repeating almost to himself, "Yes, Ramon." He nodded. "She didn't seem lost. You know, it looked like she came for someone." Germain. He got up slowly and looked out the kitchen window. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise, but the air was still cold, the same cold he had felt that night in the autopsy room. His mind raced, images mixing together. The nameless girl, her crying, the bracelet with the name Luce, and now a woman in the darkness, watching from afar, a lump in his chest, a feeling difficult to explain. He left the cup in the sink. The sound of the glass sounded dry. "Ramon, do you think she came to see the girl?" The guard looked at him in surprise. "It's possible, doctor. But if she came, why didn't she come in?" Germain took a deep breath. The air felt heavy. He looked out the window again with a serious face. His eyes filled with tears. "Maybe," he said softly, "because there are people who can only watch from afar when love hurts too much to get close." Ramon didn't answer. He just nodded slightly and left the kitchen, leaving the doctor alone. Germain stood there with his hands in the pockets of his gown, his gaze lost in the glass. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky orange. Upstairs in the ICU, Luce slept, and he, without understanding why, felt that something connected that woman from the early morning with the girl who was now breathing thanks to machines. A chill ran through his body. "Who are you?" he whispered softly. "And why you came here?" But there was no answer, only the silence of the hospital waking up and the distant echo of crying that seemed to have no end. The clock read almost 10 p.m. when Germain returned to the personal belongings room. It was a simple room with cold shelves filled with numbered bags, forgotten belongings, folded clothes, and broken toys. He slowly ran his hand over one of the labels until he found the number that corresponded the girl inside the bag. There were few things: a dirty dress stained with dirt, an unpaired sandal, and a broken rag doll with one of its eyes hanging by a thread. Germain picked up the doll carefully. The fabric was rough and smelled of mud mixed with something sweet, perhaps cheap perfume. It was small and handmade. He turned it over in his hands, looking at every crooked seam, every stitch that seemed to have been made by someone in a hurry, or with love, perhaps both. He sat down at the table. The hospital was silent, and the distant sound of the machines in the ICU seemed to come from within him. "So who are you, Luce?" he murmured without realizing it. His thumb touched something inside the doll, a harder part, different from the cotton filling. He frowned and pressed carefully. There was something inside. He grabbed a pair of small scissors and carefully cut the seam. A discreet cut. The cotton began to come out, and among it, folded several times, was a small yellowed piece of paper with torn edges and marks from dirty little hands. Germain opened it slowly. The shaky handwriting said it was from a child. The words, written in soft pencil, said, "All this is not Mom's fault. She loves me, but she's—" For a moment, he remained still. His throat went dry. The air seemed to disappear from the room. He read it several times, unable to believe it. "This isn't Mom's fault. She loves me." The letters were crooked, the words simple, but the pain that came from them was enormous. He rested his elbows on the table, covered his face with his hands, and took a deep breath. "My God," he whispered. Images began to come to his mind. A frightened little girl, a crying mother, someone running away, and that phrase like a cry wanting to clear a name. Germain ran his finger over the letters, feeling the pencil almost erased. "You wrote this to protect her, right?" he said softly. "Even though you were afraid, even though you were suffering." The broken doll was next to him, as if looking at him. He straightened the paper, folded it again, and put it in his robe pocket. With each breath, the weight on his chest increased. It was as if the pain of that girl had mixed with his own, with what he had also carried for years. But now, seeing that mended doll, that message written with so much love, something inside him broke again, and at the same time, something was born. He got up, went to the living room window, and looked out at the dark hospital courtyard. The trees swayed in the cold early morning wind. In the distance, the lights of the ICU flickered where Luce was still asleep. He took the paper from his pocket and read it again in a low voice, as if it were a prayer. "She loves me." The sound of his own voice made him tremble. "I believe you, little one," he said with tears in his eyes. "I don't believe you." He folded the paper carefully, put it back inside the doll, and pressed it against his chest. He remained there in silence, his heart racing, feeling that this piece of cloth and pain hid more than he could imagine. And for the first time in a long time, Germain cried openly, not only out of sadness, but because somehow he knew that this message, written by small, desperate hands, was going to change everything inside him. The day dawned gray when Germain left the hospital. The air outside was damp, smelling of earth after the rain. He put the rag doll in the inside pocket of his robe, as if it were an important document, and drove away along the old rue, the same one where they had brought the girl. The landscape changed slowly. Simple houses, chickens in the yard, dogs lying on the sidewalk, people with tired eyes. San Miguel del Sur was left behind, and the silence in the car sounded louder than the radio in the village that was reporting the news. The weather felt different. A small shop with an iron door, a wooden bench in front, a man cutting tobacco with a blunt knife. German stopped, took off his belt, took a deep breath, and asked the first person who passed by, a woman with a scarf on her head and hands cracked from soap. "Excuse me, I'm a doctor at the hospital. I'm looking for information about a little girl they found near the river, with dark hair. Did anyone see anything?" The woman looked him up and down suspiciously, but after a few seconds her face softened. "Are you talking about that poor creature they found almost lifeless?" She sighed. "They say she came from the woods." She leaned closer and lowered her voice. "There's a woman who's been hiding over there for weeks. She seems crazy, but she doesn't hurt anyone. She cries a lot. Sometimes you can hear her crying at night." German felt a chill run down his spine. "Can you show me the way?" She hesitated and looked around as if she were afraid to speak aloud. "Yes, I can, but it's ore over there, and there are thorns. Bring boots, yes." She pointed to her car. They walked along a narrow path. The bush brushed against their legs. There was a strong smell of dampness and rotten leaves. Birds flew out of the branches with the sound of wings, and sometimes they heard the crack of a branch under their feet. The woman walked ahead confidently. She knew every turn. "She's staying over there, near a big rock," she explained, pointing. "I brought bread a couple of times. She didn't want to talk to me. She just cried." "Thank you for bringing me," German said sincerely. "I'll go there and come back." "Yes," the woman stopped, afraid to continue. "You do the rest alone. May God be with you." German felt his heart beating fast. He continued alone, pushing branches aside with his hands. A tree trunk marked with a knife, the remains of a campfire, a piece of cloth stuck in a branch. The silence began to weigh heavily. "Hello," he called without shouting. "I'm a doctor. I don't want to hurt you. I just want to talk." Nothing but the sound of running water, a trickle further on. He took 3 more steps and saw her. She was a thin woman, very thin, cowering behind a fallen log, her clothes in tatters, her hair matted with dirt, her face sunken. She trembled when she noticed him and jumped up with the eyes of a frightened animal, ready to flee. "Calm down, calm down." German raised his hands to show he had no weapon. "I'm a doctor. I won't hurt you." She was breathing fast, almost out of breath. Her hands were cut, her fingernails full of dirt. There were old bruises on her arms. Her lips were split. She looked around as if searching for a way to escape. A second of courage, another of fear. "Who are you?" Her voice came out hoarse. German slowly took the rag doll out of his pocket and placed it on her open hand so she could see it. If you want to see more of these emotional and suspenseful stories, you can subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any of them. The doll's head hung by a thread. He said nothing else, just showed it to her. The woman's eyes opened in a way that was painful to see. Her whole body seemed to wake up. First, she took a step back, then one forward, as if something were pulling her. She recognized her. "My daughter!" The cry was heart-wrenching, a sound that was not just a voice, but an open wound. "Daughter!" She fell to her knees in the mud, her hands trembling as she tried to take the doll, but afraid to touch it. German also knelt down, offering it to her carefully. "Here," he said softly. "It's yours." She grabbed the doll and brought it to her face, hugging it as if it were a person. She cried silently, only her body trembling, her chest moving in short gasps, as if she had forgotten how to breathe. "Where is she?" she whispered weakly. "Where is my little girl?" German resisted the urge to say more than he should. He spoke calmly, choosing his words carefully. "I'm looking for answers, and for you. That's why I came." He took a bottle of water and a packet of cookies out of his backpack. "Can I help you?" She took the bottle with both hands and drank slowly, as if afraid of losing a drop. Then she looked at him suspiciously and fragilely. "Who are you, really?" "I'm Germain, a doctor from San Miguel del Sur." He pointed to the glasses in his pocket and said he had seen her pain. There was a note on her wrist. Her eyes lit up again. She pressed her wrist against her chest. I wrote it. The words came out in pieces. "I thought that if someone found it, they would know that I'm not—" Her voice broke. "That I'm not a monster." He felt her tenderness. No one who loves like that is a monster. A heavy silence fell between them. Only the stream could be heard. The wind blew and rustled the branches above. The woman closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and as if opening a door closed from the inside, she began to speak. "My name is Elena. Elena Robles." She wiped her nose with her fist. "We were afraid. Very afraid." My husband swallowed hard. He shouted and hit me, saying that the girl was my fault, that I ruined his life. Germain stood still, his face serious but his eyes full of tears. One night, Elena squeezed her wrist. It got worse. I grabbed loose, and we ran. My little girl was barefoot. It was raining. We went into the woods with no light, with nothing. I just wanted him to stop touching her. That's all. His hands were shaking. He looked at the ground as if he were still there. That night, we walked for hours. We could hear the highway in the distance. I carried Luce for a while. Then I let her down. She said, "Mommy, I'm cold." I hugged her and said, "It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay." Her voice broke. We lost our way. The rain washed everything away. I was afraid to go back. I was afraid to go on. I hid here among the trees. I thought that at dawn I would look for help. She took a deep breath with pain, but at dawn I didn't hear her. I fell asleep, I don't know for how long, and when I opened my eyes her mouth trembled. I didn't see her. I screamed. I ran. I searched for hours. Luce, Luce. She beat her chest, and the mountain gave me no answer. Germain closed his eyes for a second, holding back his own tears. He didn't interrupt her. "I came back to this place every night," Elena continued. "Empty, waiting to hear her voice. If I went near the village, I was afraid he would find me. I stayed. I asked God. I looked at the sky through the leaves. I asked for a miracle that would punish me but not hurt her." She hugged the doll again, as if she were his daughter. "Oh yes, something happened," he whispered. "She's broken because of me. I lost her. I lost her." The sentence faded away. I will never forgive myself. The silence was so great that you could hear the water among the stones. Germain reached into his pocket and took out a clean handkerchief. He offered it to her without haste. Elena said softly, "No one who did what you did to protect her deserves to die inside. Sometimes the jungle swallows people, and fear too." She accepted the handkerchief without daring to look at him for a moment. She just breathed. "Why did you come?" she asked suspiciously, her voice low. "People don't come here. They look at me as if I were trash." "I came because someone had to listen to you," Germain replied simply. "And because that doll asked me not to leave your story lying on the ground." Elena let out a short, hurt laugh, almost a sob. "She made this bracelet," she whispered, pointing to her imaginary wrist. With colorful letters, it said, "Light." You know, she really was light when she laughed. She closed her eyes, and it seemed like the house wasn't going to fall down. "Tell me her full name," Germain asked carefully, so it wouldn't get lost. "Luz Robles," she replied, proud and devastated at the same time. "My girl." Germain took a deep breath, letting the name remain between them like a lit candle. Then, in a firm and kind voice, he said, "Thank you for trusting me." Elena bowed her head slightly. "Your story matters. You matter." She bit her lip, and a thick tear rolled down her dirty face. "Now what?" she asked, leaning against the tree trunk, her body exhausted. Germain didn't promise anything he couldn't deliver. He just took one more step and spoke in the most human way he knew how. "Now let's breathe, drink more water, eat a little, and tell me everything you remember about that night, step by step." He pointed to the edge of the stream. "I'm here. I won't leave you alone." Elena felt, almost without moving, a tightening in her wrist. The jungle remained the same, damp, dark, full of little noises. But there, on that piece of land, something changed. A story came out of hiding and, although broken, began to be told. The rain pounded on the hospital windows, thick and insistent. The sound of the raindrops could be heard in the empty corridors, mixed with the constant beeping of the monitors. German walked quickly, his gown soaked, his face tired, his soul in pieces. He was returning from his trip to the village, and the first thing he did when he arrived was to go straight to the ICU. When he pushed open the glass door, his heart stopped for a moment. The light was pale, the small body trembling under the sheet. The nurses adjusted the cables. The doctor on duty murmured orders. "High fever," said Clara, distressed, wiping the sweat from the girl's forehead. It suddenly went up. "We gave her the medicine, but it's not going down." German approached slowly, his face tense, but his eyes showed something else. Fear. "What happened?" he asked, almost voiceless. "Infection, maybe," replied his colleague, without taking his eyes off the monitor. "She's very weak, doctor." He put his hand on Luce's forehead. She was hot, very hot. The heat of her skin burned his fingers, but what really hurt came from inside. "No, no, little one," he whispered, caressing her face. "Don't go, not you too." The tears came before he realized it, falling silently, wetting the corner of the sheet. Clara looked at him in surprise. She had never seen him like this. "Doctor, please sit down for a moment. You look pale." He didn't answer. He squeezed the girl's hand tightly, as if trying to grasp life by the wrist. "Don't die, you too," he said in a broken voice. The nurse's eyes widened. "She's your daughter." He closed his eyes for a moment. The memories came flooding back. The smell of smoke, the screams, the distant siren, the sound of wood falling years ago. He began staring at Luce. She was 6. Her name was Valeria. His voice emphasized every word, pushed out by the pain. "A candle. A damn candle." He swallowed his tears. "We were at home. My wife was asleep. I had stayed in the study when I smelled the smoke. It was too late. I ran. Everything was on fire. I tried to get in. God knows I tried." Clara put her hand on his shoulder, but he continued as if the memories had to come out, no matter what. He shouted her name, Valeria, and the ceiling fell. I never saw her again, only the body. Then the word body came out, scratched, painful. And since that day, I haven't slept the same. I didn't believe in anything, not in myself, not in God, not in life. Silence filled the room, only the sound of the rain, and the irregular beeping of the machine occupied the space. German took a deep breath, ran his hand over his face, and looked at Luce. "When I saw this girl," he said softly, "something changed. I felt like she was being... I don't know how to explain it. I don't know why. But she made me feel clear again." She moved a little closer, her eyes filled with tears. "You still feel guilty, don't you?" He laughed without joy. "Guilt is the only thing that doesn't burn." He looked at his trembling hands. "Not even fire can erase it." The girl moved a little, breathing with difficulty, her body feverish. German leaned closer to her, almost whispering in her ear. "Hold me, Luce. You can't die like this. You've already lost so much, and so have I. But not like this. Not today." Sweat ran down his forehead. He took a damp cloth and wiped her carefully, like someone who cares for the thing they love most in the world. Clara watched in silence, not daring to interrupt. She had never seen this man, so serious, so closed off, break down like this. "Doctor, you need to rest." He shook his head. "No, I can't." He took her hand again. The girl's hand. "I won't leave her alone for a minute." The hours passed slowly. The fever rose and fell like the tide. German remained there, motionless, his eyes fixed on her. Sometimes he murmured things softly, like someone making promises that no one else can hear. "If you survive, Luce, I swear I'll change. I swear I'll never be that empty man again." Clara returned with a new IV and knelt at his side, changing the bandage. Germain's face was tired, but there was something different in his eyes. An old hope, one he thought he had lost forever. "You know, doctor," she said, trying to break the silence. "There are people you don't know, but it seems like they come to heal something inside us." He looked at her, then looked at Luce, and nodded slowly. Yes, she came for that, to heal what the fire left behind. And while the rain continued to fall outside, German stayed there with his fingers intertwined with hers, in silent vigil, his face pressed against the sheet, his heart tight, and the certainty that this fragile girl with a fever, almost without a voice, had rekindled the only flame he still held, that of feeling love again. The hospital corridor was silent. The morning dawned timidly with a soft light coming in through the windows. Germain waited standing, leaning against the wall, his heart beating fast, his gaze fixed on the ICU door on the other side. Luce was still sleeping, weak but alive. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. Elena was coming, guided by a nurse. She walked slowly, almost without strength, her body still marked by the time spent in the forest. Her clothes were simple, her hair tied back, her face clean, but her eyes carried everything, the fear, the guilt, the love. "Are you ready?" Germain asked in a soft voice. Elena took a deep breath, deeply. "I don't know if you can ever be ready for something like this." He opened the door. The sound of the machines filled the hallway, that constant beeping that sounded like the heart itself trying to remember how to live. When Elena entered, time stood still. Luce was lying there, her face pale, cables in her arm, but her body was breathing. Elena took one step, then another, slowly, as if afraid she were dreaming. The tears were already falling before she approached. "My love," she whispered. "My life," her voice breaking, and that sound was enough. Luce moved her fingers slowly. The surprised nurse looked at Germain, who just nodded. The girl opened her eyes, confused, and blinked several times. Her gaze scanned the room until it reached her. "Mommy!" The word came out weak and drawn out, but alive. Elena covered her mouth with her hand, as if the whole world could fit into that sound. She walked quickly to the bed. She knelt down and placed her face in her daughter's little hands. "Yes, love, it's me," she cried softly. "I'm Mommy." Luz raised her arm with effort and touched her face, recognizing the warmth, the smell, the love, and then they cried together. The whole hospital seemed to fall silent. The machines continued their rhythm, but there was another sound there, that of two souls meeting after so long apart, separated by pain. Elena repeated between sobs, forgive me for losing you." Luce replied in an almost childlike voice, "Don't go away again, Mom." Elena kissed her forehead, trembling. "Never again." Germain stood there a few steps away with his hands crossed and his eyes full of tears. He tried to speak but couldn't. His throat closed up. That scene shattered everything he believed about life, loss, God, and for the first time in many years, he let the tears flow without shame. Time stood still there, changed. Elena stroked her daughter's hair and said things that only a mother and her child can understand. Luce closed her eyes and smiled softly, feeling that she was finally home. After a while, Germain approached and gently touched Elena's shoulder. "You did it," he said in a trembling voice. The two looked at him with gratitude and an exhaustion that could not be hidden. "You don't understand what you did," she whispered. "You gave me back my soul." He shook his head. "It wasn't me. It was you who gave us all back." Elena took his hand with the doll in her lap. "Thank you, from the bottom of my heart." Germain smiled, but his eyes were shining. "Thank you for reminding me that miracles still happen." Luce opened her eyes again and called out in a small voice, "Doctor!" He leaned over. "Tell me, little one, can I sleep with the light on?" she asked, and her soft smile lit up the whole room. Germain held back his laughter and emotion. "Of course, we'll leave the light on for you forever." Elena kissed her daughter again, and in that moment, the pain turned into something else. Forgiveness. A new beginning. The silence that followed was no longer the heavy silence of loss. It was a light silence, full of peace. Germain, standing next to the two of them, felt something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe, just maybe, the world still had a cure. The sun rose gently over the quiet street. The garden in front of the house smelled of wet earth and new flowers. The camera showed Luce now with her hair tied back and a blue school uniform. The backpack on her back seemed bigger than she was. She smiled and held Germain's hand tightly. With his robe slung over his shoulder, he looked at her with that mixture of pride and tenderness that only someone who has lost everything and come back to life feels. "Ready, Luce?" he asked, adjusting the collar of her blouse. "I'm nervous," she replied, biting her lip. "So you're nervous? That's a good sign." He smiled. It means you care." She laughed softly, and the two walked to the gate. The wind moved the flowers, and the sign recently placed in the garden read, "Here lives a family that was saved twice." Luce read it slowly, pointing with her finger. "Doctor, why does it say twice?" "German." He bent down to her height and replied with tears in his eyes, "Because the first time was when you started breathing again, and the second was when you made me feel alive again." Luce smiled, rested her head on his chest, and whispered, "I love Doctor." He took a deep breath, holding back his tears, and said, "And I love you, more than you can imagine. I thought I was closing a body, and I ended up opening my heart."